what we want to talk about today is how to go beyond that. You're already doing some marketing and it's time to take it to the next level. So to help me with that, I'm joined by Derek Marin, the owner of Simple Selling. Simple Selling specialize in predictable MSP lead generation, his words. And they work hard to generate warm opportunities for MSPs that want new logos for both managed and co-managed services. Derek, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello everyone. Thanks for joining.
And I guess for those that don't know me, I lead product and solutions at Zementum. I know we've got quite a lot of Zementum customers in here today, so anyone facing any challenges, feel free to reach out to me. But on that note, I'm going to hand over to Derek to take us through thoughts of the day. Oh, we've lost your audio, Derek. You're on mute. I think you've hit. There we go. No, you're on mute again. Now you're not. I can hear you now. No.
How about now?
Yes. Don't click mute again. We can hear you now.
Click that button.
Don't click that button.
All right. Well, hey folks, good morning or good afternoon. Not sure where folks are dialing in from. Ben, can you please confirm? Can you see my screen right now?
I can, and therefore I'm hoping everybody else can as well.
I hope so as well. Great. Well, I'm just gonna jump right in, Ben, and I hope that we can make this as conversational as possible here. So, but yeah, just a very quick hello. As Ben mentioned, I'm Derek. I'm the owner of this company called Simple Selling. We do business development and marketing for MSPs that have better things to do. Really quick background on myself. I'm from Massachusetts originally. I'm actually here just south of Boston. I'm a dad, big football fan. I'm going to say football for you, Ben, soccer fan. Also, I put down son of a house cleaner because, a lot of times folks are asking me like, how did you get into, working with managed services providers or having an agency or a small business? And it really, I don't have an IT background. I didn't work in MSP before this. I've been going at this, we've been going for about 4 years now. Yeah, I grew up I'm the son of immigrants. Both my parents are from Venezuela. My mom, was cleaning homes before I was born. So I grew up seeing the small business grow and the resiliency that came with that. And so I wanted to have my own business as well. And I was fortunate to get introduced to an MSP like 4 years ago. And here we are today. So we're working with, we're still a small organization. Last year, just for some data points, we made over 94,000 cold calls last year for MSPs. We helped close 39 managed services or co-managed services agreements through the lead generation. We're not involved in closing. So that's the very quick background on myself. And yeah, so just wanted to dive in here. And again, Ben, please do, just interrupt me because I'm just looking at a screen, and one of the things I hate about webinars is I can't see anybody, and I feel like I'm speaking to myself some of the time.
We're listening. We are listening.
Okay. Thank you. That was really helpful. So anyway, so folks, we're here. I hope in part because we want to stand out as MSPs, be the purple cow. This quote from Seth Godin: cows, after you've seen 1 or 2 or 10, or they're boring, but a purple cow, now that would be something. And I want to totally say I totally agree with Ben's first comment at the beginning of this, which is that we're not intending to, with this topic, to to disparage any organization that's providing great marketing content for MSPs, because I totally agree. Like, we even use similar, we don't work with Tech Tribe at the moment, but other similar companies that provide some marketing content, and there's certainly a huge space for that and benefit for that. But today is really about sort of how does an MSP kind of take the next step? And I would love to get some of the folks who are here to share from their own perspective or experience or thoughts on what has been sort of your experience when it comes to generic content marketing? Are you getting some of the results that you expect, or what are some of the challenges that you've seen with using this type of generic IT tech tip content? I want to see if anyone cares to share anything in the comments section. Ben, I'm not sure if you're able to see,
Yeah,
but I'm
I'll
not
keep an eye on the
able
chat.
to.
Yeah, and I think if anyone's got any comments along the way, please do drop them in the chat. I'll pick out the comments, read them out. If there's anything that I think Derek should be addressing, then we'll chat about it.
Yeah.
Sadly, though, nobody has anything to say about this. Oh,
Okay.
there you go. We don't get many reactions from the canned content. That's a
You
really
don't
good
get.
comment.
Thank you for breaking the ice. Who else?
I'd like to drill in a little bit. So,
Not
what do
getting
we
many
mean by
reactions or
reactions there?
responses from it. Mm.
Does that feel like we're just sending out content, sending, but not getting anything back? But how do we measure what we're getting back? Are we looking at clicks? Are we looking at opens? Are we somehow measuring tangible business off the back of it? Like, I think there's quite a lot to dig into there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that what we've found is that there's a lot is changing in your industry, and I've been learning so much in just these last couple of years, sort of about how the MSP industry has evolved, and I think this kind of plays into maybe why generic tech tip content is not as effective maybe as it once was. So this is just a screenshot of TechTarget's MSP evolution timeline, and you can see that so much has happened. I'm not going to read through this whole list because you guys know your business and all the things that have changed over the years. But I think one of the things that really sticks out to me is looking at, for example, from 2000 to 2005, there was that RMM was like the new sort of software that came out, and PSAs started to take shape, as it says, and development of MSP peer groups. And so, while today this may not seem like a big deal, and every MSP has these types of tools, back then that was novel and new. And similarly, when it comes to from the customer's perspective, the SMB, if you work with small, medium-sized businesses, which is, what most of the MSPs, at least at our team, our MSP partners are targeting. As a result of your evolution as an MSP and your technology evolving and your services improving, et cetera, the experience for your customers has improved. And this is from, I believe this is from Datto, one of their surveys of SMBs, and they put in, you can see 95% of SMBs, agree that IT helps their business succeed, but 45% of them still view IT mainly as a cost center. And the takeaway is interesting, which it says, when pitching to new prospects, rather than focusing on the technical aspects of IT, speak to the impact IT can have towards their business growth. And so, Ben, what are your thoughts on this sort of like, Ben, how long have you been working in the MSP space? I mean, I can't remember from our previous conversation, but I think you had said.
I was looking at the previous slide, actually trying to slot in my entry and my exit from being an MSP into that. And my entry point was around 2008. So during that maturation of MSP software. In fact, when I started my MSP, I started off on a kind of a CRM that did a bit of ticketing because I didn't even know what a PSA was. No one had come up to me and said, "Hey, you need a PSA." So it was only when I got a chance call from one of Datto's sales reps in, I think it was about 2012, trying to sell me, it was like trying to sell me PPI insurance, like, a PSA I didn't want, need, or ask for, but it ultimately completely changed my life overnight. And then my exit point was actually during the pandemic in 2020, where an opportunity came about to sell and exit the business.
Got it. So many years, I mean, many years in the MSP space yourself. And, as I was saying, this is, certainly part of the reason, like as much as the MSP industry has evolved and changed, one of the things that hasn't changed as much is, the playbook for marketing or the playbook for content, and what I've seen now in these 4 years that we've been working with for business development for MSPs is, by and large, when we go to an MSP website or when we go to their social networks, or even when I'm speaking to an MSP president, many times it's the same kind of wording around proactive. The websites are full of tech tips, ransomware and cybersecurity, and for obvious reasons, cybersecurity is super important. It's what keeps everyone up at night, especially MSPs. But from a business development standpoint, it's getting kind of noisy, and it kind of starts to feel like everyone's a brown cow. Everyone's kind of the same. And I think that's kind of what we want to try to figure out. How do we break away from that? And it's certainly not an easy thing to do. And I've been working on this very specific problem just for a couple of years, and it's not an easy thing to crack. But we've learned a couple things, and some of the things I wanted to chat about today was sort of how we go about kind of helping some MSPs look a little more purple, stand out a little bit. So one of the first things we look at, Ben, is when and folks is just asking the question to all of you, like, who will see you as purple? Who will see you as different, right? Because that's before we get into what content we're going to create, because we have to know who we're going after, right? So, and why does the who matter? Because if we don't really know who we're trying to appeal to, the content that we create is just it feels like you're just throwing spaghetti on the wall, right? It's like you have no idea if this is going to stick or not. And what is the only sort of alternative when you're not sure if some content is resonating with your audience or not? What is the next thing that typically you want to do as a hedge in terms of content creation? What do you have to increase as a hedge or as a safety net in case you're not hitting the mark? Ben, what do you think?
Well, I think one of the things we perhaps discussed before was around how do you get the content from within your existing teams. In fact, one of the polls that I had, I wasn't sure whether to use it now or later, but it might be nice to start sort of collecting the information is, are you currently using your service team to generate content ideas? Because using your existing service team to generate content ideas helps you to understand the who. Who are your existing customers? Who are the ones that respond best to the messaging you're putting out? And therefore, how can you use that to tailor the messaging you put out to prospects?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of, I think, the benefits or the advantages, I guess, is not sure that's the best word, of the next phase in content creation, which is that you are the experts. You MSPs, your team, your TAMs, your technology account managers, or your VCIOs, or you as the account exec or the marketing person, or everyone internally. You guys know your customers best. You know what business problems they face, and so the content ideas really should be coming from you guys. And so just moving forward here. So I just wanted to share, just to take a step back in terms of the importance of making sure that we have the right who, the right target. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Joshua Bell. I'll just read this. It's just a little story. So a man sat at a metro station in Washington, D.C. and started to play the violin. It was a cold January morning. He played 6 Bach pieces for about 45 minutes. During that time, since it was rush hour, it was calculated that thousands of people went through the station, most of them on their way to work. In the 45 minutes the musician played, only 6 people stopped and stayed for a while. And when he finished playing and Sons took over, no one noticed it. No one applauded, nor was there any recognition. No one knew this, but the violinist was Joshua Bell, one of the best musicians in the world. 2 days before his playing in the subway, he'd sold out at a theater in Boston, and when the seats averaged over $100. So I think sort of the takeaway of this little story is that, you know, who you're going after is going to be super important, right? You want to make sure that any content you're creating is going to actually resonate with that really specific audience, right? And nothing more clear than an example here with Joshua Bell, having the right audience to actually respect and admire what he's doing versus just being in a public space where no one really knows that who he is. So in connection with that, one of the things that we look at on the business development side is, it's because we're looking at cold prospects for MSPs, and getting them to become warmer, right? Is trying to understand, like, why do customers actually switch? And, one of our favorite, most helpful, resources or white papers that we came across is one by Logically, which is a large MSP, and they have a white paper called 6 Reasons Why Companies Switch MSPs. And here are the 6 reasons, but the 3 that really sort of stick out is the 2, which says service offerings aren't tailored to your needs, and 5 and 6, there's a lack of vision and strategy, and the 6th one, you're not getting enough value from your investment. And so when we think about content creation and we think about, who we're going after, Ben, I think we have to be thinking about these types of pain points or challenges, right, for the organizations that are willing to go through the change, right? They're willing to have all of their employees, the ones in office, the ones that are remote, go through that painstaking process of switching from one managed services provider to the other, because these reasons here are super, super important to them.
I think what I'm getting from this is actually looking at completely from the other angle, which is if you have clients leaving you, these 6 reasons you need to really be looking at as well is, how can you retain your clients? Forget about gaining new clients, but how can you retain your clients? If those are known to be the 6 main reasons people leave, how can you fix your own service delivery to ensure you retain your clients? And that last one about the value from your investment, it's so, I see conversations on Facebook groups, Tech Tribe all the time about whether they should be sending some kind of quarterly reports and how many computers have antivirus and all sorts of like really data-driven reports, which I don't think are helpful. But how do you communicate value to your existing clients? But that's a complete different tangent and maybe another topic for another session with somebody else.
Yeah, no, I'm by far not the expert on communicating like your business value to your each SMB, right? But I do think, and you brought up a great point, like if you're struggling with retention, then you shouldn't be in this webinar for content creation. You should be focused on taking care of the customers first, right? And fixing, these items or whatever that aspect is for your service deliverability. But when it comes to business development, this is the stuff that could really sort of line things up for you. And thinking about actually what you just mentioned, Ben, which is kind of like how do we communicate business value, because that's what customers or potential customers are really looking for. And the way we kind of look at it is, your industry went from break fix to the SG&A MSP, sales general administrative, where the service is super important, IT support, infrastructure, keeping everything working uptime, no downtime, right? Backup in disaster, the things that just keep your customer's business running, operations, super important. Unfortunately, though, that has become table stakes because your industry has evolved so much and your technology is better. And so now customers put, as we saw in that survey with Datto, a lot of that in sales general administrative on their profit and loss statement. In other words, what do they customers want to do? They want to put pressure on your price down, 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 down. Whereas now, one way to stand out, one way to communicate better business value, and to not have people switch because they say you don't understand or provide a vision or provide IT strategy, right? Per the last slide, one of the things about ways to reduce COGS or cost of goods sold for your customer, for your SMB. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with COGS, cost of goods sold, but that is sort of the costs that your customers have for producing their own products and services, right? That goes right below in the profit and loss statement. That goes revenue at the very top minus cost of goods sold, right? So for a manufacturer, it's all the different raw materials, the people, the machines involved in actually producing stuff, right? For professional services, it's the people who are directly creating or providing the service for any type of professional service, you name it, accounting, attorneys, etc. Right? So as an MSP, if you can be reducing COGS or reducing those costs for your customers, that's going to elevate you and help you start to separate and become more purplish, because we want to be purple. So these are just some ideas: business process improvement MSP, decision-making improvement MSP, revenue improvement MSP. Actually, I heard this. I heard about this one from, or this idea actually. This COGS and SG&A was not my idea. It was not my idea. I'm a big viewer. I don't know about you, Ben, but I've been watching Dave Sobel on MSP Radio, and he had a great video on this, talking about quantifying the business value for MSPs. And this is where he talks about SG&A and COGS. So if anyone's interested in getting a much better explanation about this than me, I can be happy to share that video link. But he gave an example of revenue improvement, where if there's a nonprofit that your MSP is serving and they're struggling to get more donations, you can help, and for, that's revenue for them, or, raising funds. So if you can help them with their e-commerce, or help them communicate to more potential donors, right? By leveraging their Microsoft Dynamics potentially, or maybe you help integrate their Microsoft with some other CRM or sales automation tool, right? Those types of things are an example of revenue improvement, right? That goes outside of standard IT support items. And then automation, cybersecurity, of course, super important. You guys are the experts. Unfortunately, from a business development perspective, cold prospects, everyone is a cybersecurity expert when we cold call, when they pick up the phone from our cold calls. And so it doesn't resonate as much, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. But as a differentiator, as a purplish thing to do, but it's definitely not as unique. Ben, I don't know if anything I'm mentioning, what your thoughts may be, or if anyone is has any thoughts on anything mentioned here.
No, I don't think so. Just dropped the results from the previous poll about whether people are using their service team to generate content ideas, and a pretty even split. Yes, no, somewhat. So I don't know if have you got a slide later that kind of gets to ways to leverage that?
Yeah. So I got a couple more slides. So another one, actually we can, since that is top of mind right now, we can come back to this. So that's okay. So when it comes to what should your MSP be saying, or the content creation, Ben, this seemed to be a topic that resonated with you from our previous conversations while we're having the webinar. But did this kind of stand out to you as like a novel idea, or like that in your previous MSP, were there services team involved in creating content there, or something that you had wished had happened? I just kind of want to hear your
Yeah, I
thoughts.
think it's more on the wished side. It had never occurred to me to leverage the people who are actually speaking to the clients all day, every day to get them to generate content. So really hoping you've got some great ideas to share with people about how to encourage that kind of inquisitive culture of creation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have great ideas on this, if I'm being totally candid. It's because look, Ben, I mean, it's hard because everyone in an MSP's team, I'm sure you know yourself and from your previous colleagues and peers or people who work for you, you guys are so busy taking care of tickets and customers and this, that, and all the certifications and compliance and what have you. And so I don't think it's easy, Ben. But just because it's not easy doesn't mean that it's doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do. MSPs, you guys are at a point where to really get anywhere in sales, marketing, business development now, you got to start doing some of these things, some of these harder things. And one of the points that this gentleman, John, director of marketing for Databox, they're a SaaS company, but he's a marketing guy. And I love how he put this, which is and I hope that this helps if if some of you guys are thinking, man, um, I'll just read it because he explains it much better. Your team needs more reporters and fewer columnists. Recently, a fairly well-known SaaS exec told me, we have a lot of content ranking on page one. I just hope no one reads it. Their writers just don't have the expertise to connect with their niche audience, but it's optimized, so it ranks, but it's not good. He thinks the solution is that they need better or different writers. I disagreed. I think his current writers just need a new process. Most content strategies employ the columnist approach, which relies on writers to provide both the writing and the expertise. But most subject matter experts aren't writers, and most writers won't have the specific subject matter expertise you need. And then the other checkpoint there, this relies, the game changes when you take the reporter's approach. That relies on writers to find and highlight the expertise of others. You need more reporters and not columnists. So, I think Ben, what we need is a really good, and MSPs, you guys are pros at process, right? So we just need a better way. And each MSP that we work with is a little bit different. Their team is structured slightly differently. And so there's no one size fits all. But you guys know your team. You know what bandwidth, if any, your TAMs and AEs have. So I think it's important to adapt and find ways to spend one-on-one time with them. So here are some specific tips, Ben, like point by point, but none of this will be like wowzer, but like I said, it's not easy, but important. So I can go through these. Well, the first point is the one we just looked at. Marketers should be reporters, not columnists. The other one is, I think if anyone is going from the content packs and dependence on click, paste, and then you're going to get into content creation, it's important that you don't try to run a marathon at first, and you're not trying to also optimize for SEO and for Google and Bing or whatever other search engine, right? In my opinion, Ben, my personal opinion is that we need to focus more on the message and making sure that it resonates with that target audience, and at least as a starting point, if you're getting into your own content creation. I would highly recommend, it's missing on here, I think I had it before, having a quarterback or having a marketing manager, or could be internally, could be outside a company, a vendor, that helps take the project management for all this stuff, right? Because be that reporter, right? To make sure everything kind of happens. And when it comes to getting account execs or account managers, VSAOs involved slowly, don't just send them an email and say, hey, we're going to start doing content creation marketing. It's really important. You know, you need to help out, because if they don't see that, you know, you as the leader or as the director or as the president, that you're really explaining why this matters and why it's pivotal, right? In order for you guys to differentiate and be more purple and purple cowish, as Seth Godin would say, you really need their subject matter expertise to come in. So there needs to be a meeting, you know, you need to pull in the team. It needs to be explained, you know, the why needs to be explained. And there's a great video by Simon Sinek on the importance of articulating, communicating internally as to why you're going to request, your team's help. So not everyone needs to write a blog. Some people prefer, to just have a dialogue to be recorded. Others may be great on camera. Each person might be a different, there's a different way to go about, but we need to adapt. You're going to need to adapt to the different individuals on the team, which I've mentioned a few times. And, rewarding the team, I think, bonuses, gift cards, you name it, because this is the hive, right, for your content ideas come from. And they didn't sign up as for your services team and anticipate necessarily becoming part of the marketing engine. So I think it's only fair that there may be some kind of compensation or reward or recognition, right? So if they help produce something, it goes up on the website, and then a lead comes in and that lead becomes a customer, doing one of those huddles where that person on your team who was responsible for the interview with the reporter, quote unquote marketing manager or vendor, that they get that recognition. That can go a really long way. It may not just need to be monetary compensation. Oh, and the last point, it was content recycling is the way to go. So, I've been making podcasts recently. I'm not, I have a long ways to go, but I'm repurposing that. So I have my outline, I have my ideas from what we're doing every day in the trenches for MSPs, record our podcast, and then I pass that along to get recycled. So it gets sliced into little clips, and that gets repurposed for social media, for LinkedIn, etc. So whatever process you come up with, try to always think of it as something that's going to be repurposed. It's not, a one trick pony type of marketing or content creation approach. But Ben, I don't know.
One of the things I wanted to talk about in a bit more detail, was the whole switching journey. You've talked about how a lot of the prospects are going to have an incumbent MSP. About to drop a new poll here. Do you believe you have a compelling switching journey to communicate to prospects? Yes, no, unsure. Because I think it would be really interesting then to talk about what can you do. You've highlighted some of the reasons they're likely to be leaving their former MSP, but how do you captivate the other side of that and communicate why they should be working with you?
Mm-hmm. Curious what people are answering there.
It's a clear, so far it's a clear majority no, which I think is, that doesn't surprise me at all. It's not something I'd ever considered in my MSP, is what pains are these people going through when they currently have an IT provider. And I think, in fact, it was on Technology Marketing Toolkit. I get their daily digest email from the Robin Robbins community. And one of the questions on there was, from one of the members was, I feel like every time our cold caller speaks to a local business, they say they already have an IT company. And I think that's got to be one of the most common objections. Oh,
yeah. We do a lot of cold calling, and yeah. We try not even to mention IT in our 2 or 3 minute interruption. Which
so
sounds
when you talk about this compelling switching journey, because those were your words, what do we mean by that, and what does a compelling switching journey look like?
Yeah. So when I was talking about switching, and that was just something I learned, the hard way, because like kind of like you said in the cold calling, the first objection was like, we got a guy, or we have an MSP, et cetera, et cetera. And so it became really clear early on, when we started, um, that it was a switching challenge here. And compelling reasons, they vary so much, right? Because kind of, you know, I when we think about the different types of SMBs that we're reaching out to, you know, they have different type, they're different businesses and they're across many different verticals. And so part of the challenge, I guess, is for us anyway, is to really understand what are the business challenges that each of these different niches or verticals experience day to day that maybe the incumbent is not getting around to asking them about. Maybe the incumbent is so focused on IT support that they haven't been as consistent about asking their customers about how business is going, outside of the IT and the tickets and that sort of technical stuff. And so that becomes sort of our focus on the outbound side. I'm not sure I'm really answering your question. I think you're saying, what was your question, Ben, or how did we, so the
Well,
switching journey,
it was,
something
yeah.
related to that?
Can you take us through what a compelling switching journey looks like from start to finish? How do you create the content? How do you actually
Actually,
put together the story? How do you communicate the story? How do you ultimately take them from saying, I've already got an IT provider, I don't need you, to here's a signed contract?
yeah. So this slide, I think, is probably I don't have our whole playbook right in this presentation, but at a high level, this is basically our approach. So our approach is, first and foremost, we have to capture the lead. And actually, let me take one step back here. Customers don't really know any better, right? Going back to the switching journey, right? This is from Dato's SMB survey, and what sticks out to me anyways, whether they have internal only, or they outsource completely, or they co-manage, the somewhat, or the dissatisfied is a relatively, or pretty small percentage in almost all cases, somewhat dissatisfied. Um, and so most customers don't know any better about what is the benefit of switching, or et cetera. So because of that, it makes the switching very, very challenging. And so our approach, and there's many approaches to this, but you're asking me, how do we do the whole switching journey, right? Starts with lead capture. So like the hunter, right? So we have to understand, or you as an MSP, you want to be that purple cow. You want to find who is the ideal customer, right, for you. We're going to make a list of these types of ideal prospects. And there's different ways to capture leads. Simple selling just so happens to approach lead capture from a cold calling, outbound prospecting tactic. So that's how we sort of start conversations with prospects. And in the majority of cases, no surprise, Ben, they say they have they have a managed services provider, they have an IT guy, and they're not in the buying or not in the switching. I'm catching them at a bad time, and we're not looking to burn a bridge here or to force anyone into anything. And so the predominant play after that is to do demand generation, which is through that content creation, which is what we talked about today, which is the expertise is inside the MSP, and there's different ways to create that content with the different people on the team and their strengths, and making sure that we're also farming. So what we mean symbolically here is like we're making sure that that content is reaching those same prospects that politely and respectfully said no thank you to moving forward in the sales process today. So we need to just continuously nurture and water those same prospects. And that actually, that gets to, like, I received an email not too long ago from an MSP that we do the outbound for at the moment, but we're not doing the full process for. And he said we're with his other marketing company that we're not getting any value for money there. We get posts on social, blog posts too, but there's little engagement, which I can see. So the point is, and we haven't, that's sort of the email, but the point being that, customers or potential customers, they're not necessarily searching for you right now. They are relatively somewhat satisfied where they are for the most part. So the journey, at least that the way we see it, Ben, is we need to go to them. We need to snipe them, which is a terrible word, but capture them. In our way, it happens to be through outbound, but there's other ways to do that. I'm sure folks in this webinar have lots of different ways. They could be doing pay-per-click. They could be doing events. Lots of different ways that you could have that one-to-one interaction with good prospects. But then that journey just needs to be through a continuous watering and farming of the best prospects.
I think there's quite a well positioned question here. Someone's chosen to remain anonymous, but it was about 20 minutes ago while we were talking about the content packs more. How do we find the balance between speaking too much tech or too much IT, and maybe going the other direction and using too many business buzzwords? My concern is we want to be clear to clients like what we do, which is IT, even if we find a way to stand out, purple cow, and we learn how to relate our IT services better to their business needs. And then he goes on to give an example, he or she goes on to give an example. Imagine if Costco was called Costco VIP Club instead of Costco Wholesale. It would be confusing to the customer. And if you didn't know what it was, you would assume it was a different kind of business. So finding that balance in the messaging, it still needs to be clear and simple what we do, even if we do have a purple cow. I want people to know right away when they see any of our stuff, like the website and so on, what we do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's this is not easy. It's certainly not easy to crack this, but I think just having this conversation internally, anyone who's come to this is at least maybe thinking or is already on a journey beyond the content generic tech tips stage. But I really think you guys know the answer. That's how I say. You guys know your customers. You know which verticals or business issues. I hate using verticals or niche, because I feel like, Ben, sometimes when I say that to an MSP, some of them feel like, shoot, I'm going to be losing out if I go vertical focus. But business problems that you guys solve especially well, and kind of staking your flag deep in the ground on having a unique perspective on that, and doing that a little differently, and just communicating that through the stories that you gather from your team, which is, as I mentioned, no easy task, but very important if we want to get purpley. We want to start standing out, and we want to give people a reason to take that appointment or to give you a call back instead of all of the other MSPs that have been sending them tech tips. It's really, really difficult, I think, for them to distinguish unless we go down this path.
Just wondering if we've got any other questions from the audience, or have you got any other slides that you haven't covered yet, Derek?
No, I think no, I think that was it. I hope that this was helpful.